The dinner that destroyed my marriage, but also saved my life. Sarah Mitchell, 32, nurse in Austin, Texas. A sensitive and observant woman who believed she had found the love of her life in Mark, a successful tech entrepreneur. Married for 5 years, Sarah always saw Mark as the perfect man, until that one dinner date that changed everything forever. Welcome to Revenge Cat. We reveal gripping stories of broken trust, family secrets, and shocking twists. If you're craving powerful narratives, raw emotions, and the sweet pain of karma, this is your place. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing. Hi everyone. My name is Sarah, and I need to tell you about the dinner that destroyed my marriage, but also saved my life. It was supposed to be a celebration, a simple family dinner at our house in Austin. My parents, Mark's parents, his brother and sister-in-law, everyone gathered around our dining table, laughing, sharing stories. The kind of evening that makes you feel grateful for the life you've built. But then Mark walked into the dining room carrying a small black box. He placed it right in the center of the table, between the wine glasses and the candles. And when his little niece reached for it, because kids are naturally curious, right? Mark's voice cut through the warm atmosphere like a knife. Don't touch it. Not please don't touch it, or that's not for you, sweetie. Just don't touch it. Cold final. Like a command. And in that moment, as I watched my husband, the man I'd been married to for 5 years, the man I thought I knew better than anyone, stare at that box with panic in his eyes, I knew that whatever was in that box would change everything. And you know what? I was right. Because when I finally opened it, when I saw what Mark had been hiding from me, from his family, from everyone, he screamed. He actually screamed like I'd just destroyed his entire world. Which, looking back now, I guess I did. But let me start from the beginning, because you need to understand how perfect everything seemed before that box appeared. The perfect life, or so I thought. My life with Mark was, well, it was everything I'd ever dreamed of when I was a little girl playing house. We met 6 years ago at a coffee shop downtown. I was exhausted after a double shift at the hospital. I'm a nurse, by the way, working in the cardiac unit, and this incredibly handsome guy in an expensive suit offered to pay for my latte when I realized I'd left my wallet at work. Mark Mitchell. Tech entrepreneur. Successful. Charming. The kind of man who opens doors and remembers your favorite flowers and never forgets anniversaries. He courted me like something out of a romance novel. Dinner dates at the nicest restaurants in Austin. Weekend trips to wine country. He met my parents after 2 months and had them eating out of the palm of his hand by the end of the evening. When he proposed, a year later, with a ring that probably cost more than I made in 6 months, I didn't hesitate. I said yes because Mark was safe, stable, everything I thought I wanted in a husband. Our wedding was beautiful, 150 guests, flowers everywhere, a reception at the Four Seasons. I felt like a princess. Mark's company was doing incredibly well. So we bought this gorgeous house in Westlake Hills. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a pool in the backyard. From the outside, we were the perfect couple. But here's the thing about perfect, and I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. Perfect is usually hiding something. It started with small things. Things so insignificant that I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Mark would get mysterious phone calls and step outside to take them. When I asked who it was, he'd say work stuff. And change the subject. His laptop was always password protected. Not unusual, right? Lots of people protect their work computers. But Mark would physically close it whenever I walked into the room, even if I was just bringing him coffee. He started working late more often, coming home at 9, 10 o'clock at night, sometimes smelling like perfume that wasn't mine. When I mentioned it, he laughed it off. I was in meetings with clients all day. Sarah, you know how some women wear too much perfume? And the business trips. Oh, the business trips. They increased from maybe once a month to nearly every week. Mark would pack his expensive suitcase, kiss me goodbye, and disappear for 3, sometimes for days at a time. I tried to push down the voice in my head that whispered, "Something isn't right," because Mark was still Mark, you know, still charming, still brought me flowers on Fridays, still told me he loved me every morning before leaving for work. But that voice, it kept getting louder. Especially after I noticed the credit card statements. I wasn't trying to spy on Mark. I want to make that clear. I am not the kind of wife who goes through her husband's pockets or checks his phone when he is sleeping. But when you're married, you handle household finances together. At least, that's what I thought marriage was supposed to be like. Mark handled most of our bills. He made significantly more money than I did. My nurse's salary was decent, but nothing compared to what his tech company brought in. So he managed our joint accounts, our mortgage, all of that. But one day in March, about 2 months before that dinner, I was looking for our insurance papers and I opened his desk drawer. That's when I saw the credit card statement. It was for an account I didn't know existed. A card in Mark's name only. And as I stared at the charges, my heart started beating so fast I thought I might pass out right there in our home office. Jewelry stores. Expensive restaurants I'd never been to. Hotel charges in cities where Mark supposedly had business meetings, but the dates didn't match what he'd told me. And then I saw it. The charge that made my blood run cold. Victoria's Secret, $847. On a Tuesday afternoon when Mark said he was in meetings all day. I don't shop at Victoria's Secret. I haven't bought lingerie that expensive in ... well, ever. I put the statement back exactly where I found it and walked upstairs to our bedroom. I sat on the edge of our bed. The bed where Mark told me he loved me every night, and I cried, because deep down, I knew what those charges meant. I knew why Mark was working late and taking mysterious phone calls and coming home smelling like someone else's perfume. But I didn't know how to prove it. And more importantly, I didn't know if I wanted to prove it. Sometimes ignorance feels safer than the truth, but the universe has a funny way of making sure you can't hide from the truth forever. 3 days after I found that credit card statement, Mark came home with a big smile and an announcement. "My parents want to have a family dinner this weekend," he said, loosening his tie and pouring himself a glass of wine. "Everyone's coming. My brother, Jessica, their kids, your parents, ... the whole family." I looked up from the medical journals I was reading. "That sounds nice. Where are they thinking?" "Actually," Mark said, and something flickered across his face. Something I couldn't quite identify. "I suggested we host it here. I thought it would be good to have everyone over. Show off the house, you know." Mark rarely wanted to entertain. In 5 years of marriage, we'd hosted maybe 3 dinner parties total. He usually preferred going out, claiming he didn't want me to have to cook and clean. "You want to host dinner for 10 people?" I asked. "I'll order from that Italian place you love. Get it catered. You won't have to do anything except look beautiful and charm my family." He kissed the top of my head. What do you say? Looking back now, I wonder if Mark was planning something. If he knew what was coming and wanted witnesses. Or maybe he thought having our families there would keep me from making a scene if I discovered something I was unsupposed to discover. Either way, I said yes. Because despite everything, despite the credit card statements and the late nights and the phone calls, I still wanted to believe that Mark and I could work through whatever was wrong with our marriage. I still wanted to believe in us. God, I was naive. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, which should have been my first warning that the evening wasn't going to go as planned. I spent the morning cleaning the house from top to bottom, even though our housekeeper had been there on Friday. I couldn't sit still. Something was making me anxious, and I couldn't figure out what it was. Mark was different that day, jumpy. He kept checking his phone and looking out the windows like he was expecting someone. When I asked if he was okay, he snapped at me. "I'm fine, Sarah. Why do you always assume something's wrong?" But Mark was clearly not fine. He was sweating. Even though our air conditioning was running, he couldn't seem to focus on any conversation for more than a few minutes, and he kept disappearing upstairs, claiming he needed to check on work emails. At around 4 o'clock, our families started arriving. My parents came first, Mom with her famous apple pie and Dad with stories about his golf game. Mark's parents arrived shortly after, followed by his brother David and sister-in-law Jessica with their 2 kids. For a while, everything felt normal. We gathered in the living room with wine and appetizers. Dad and Mark's father got into their usual debate about football. Mom and Jessica discussed the kids' school activities. Mark's mother complimented the new curtains I'd hung in the dining room. The catered Italian food was perfect. We sat around our dining room table, the same table where Mark and I had eaten hundreds of meals together, and it felt like family, like love, like the life I'd always wanted. I started to relax. Maybe I'd been paranoid about the credit card statements. Maybe there was a perfectly innocent explanation for everything. And then Mark excused himself from the table. "I'll be right back," he said, squeezing my shoulder as he walked past my chair. He was gone for maybe 10 minutes. When he returned, he was carrying that small black box. The box was about the size of a jewelry box, but it wasn't the kind you buy from a store. It was plain black, no markings, no logo, the kind of box that could contain anything. Mark placed it directly in the center of our dining table, between the flickering candles and the half-empty wine glasses. "What's that, Uncle Mark?" asked Jessica's 6-year-old daughter, Emily, reaching toward it with curiosity. That's when Mark's voice cut through the warm conversation like a sword. "Don't touch it." The entire table went quiet. Emily's hand froze in midair, and she looked up at Mark with confused eyes. "Mark," Jessica said gently, "she's just curious. What's in the box?" But Mark didn't answer Jessica. He was staring at that box like it contained explosives. Like one wrong move might blow up everything around us. "Don't touch it," he repeated, this time looking directly at me. And in that moment, as I watched my husband's face go pale, as I saw sweat beginning to form on his forehead, as I noticed his hands trembling slightly as he reached for his wine glass, I knew that whatever was in that box was the answer to all of my questions. The explanation for the late nights and the mysterious phone calls and the credit card charges and the perfume that was unto mine. The truth I'd been too afraid to look for was sitting right there in front of me. "Mark," I said quietly, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's in the box?" He looked at me then, and I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Fear, panic, and underneath it all, ... guilt. "It's nothing, Sarah, just ... please don't touch it." But it wasn't nothing. You don't place nothing in the center of a family dinner table and then forbid everyone from looking at it. You don't break out in a cold sweat over nothing. I reached for the box. Mark's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Hard. Hard enough that I gasped. "Sarah," he said through gritted teeth, "don't touch it." My parents were staring. Mark's parents looked confused and concerned. David and Jessica exchanged glances across the table. "Mark," his father said carefully, "maybe you should explain what's going on." But Mark didn't explain. He just sat there, gripping my wrist, staring at that box like it might start ticking at any moment. And that's when I made the decision that changed everything. I was tired of being kept in the dark. Tired of mysterious phone calls and secret credit cards and coming home to a husband who smelled like another woman's perfume. Tired of feeling like I was married to a stranger. I wanted the truth. Even if the truth destroyed everything. I pulled my wrist free from Mark's grip and reached for the box again. Sarah, no. Mark's voice cracked like a whip, but I didn't stop. My fingers closed around the smooth black surface. The box was heavier than it looked, and warm, like it had been sitting in sunlight. Please, Mark whispered, and I'd never heard him sound so desperate. Please don't open it. But I was already lifting the lid. The first thing I saw was red silk. Rich, expensive red silk that caught the candlelight and seemed to glow. I lifted it out of the box. It was lingerie. A complete set, bra, panties, a matching robe. The kind of lingerie that costs hundreds of dollars. The kind I'd seen charged to that secret credit card. But it wasn't my size. This lingerie was a size small. I wear a medium. It was also a style I would never choose. Bold red with black lace trim. I prefer subtle colors. Classic cuts. I held up the bra, and my hands were shaking. This isn't mine, I said quietly. The table was completely silent. Even Emily had stopped fidgeting in her chair. Sarah, Mark started, but I wasn't finished. I reached back into the box. Underneath the lingerie was a stack of photographs. Polaroid pictures. The kind people take when they don't want digital evidence. I flipped through them quickly, and with each image, I felt pieces of my heart breaking off and crashing to the floor. Mark. My husband. The man who promised to love and cherish me until death do us part. With another woman, they weren't just innocent photos either. These were intimate, private, the kind of pictures you take with someone you're in love with, or at least, someone you're sleeping with. The woman was beautiful. She was young, maybe 25, 26, young enough to be impressed by an older man with money and expensive suits. In another, Mark had his arms around her, kissing her neck. They were in what looked like a hotel room. I recognized the hotel. It was the Four Seasons downtown. The same hotel where Mark and I had our wedding reception. Who is she? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Mark was white as a sheet. Sweat was pouring down his face now, and his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his wine glass. Sarah, I can explain. Who is she? I asked again, louder this time, but I already knew I wouldn't need Mark to tell me, because underneath the photographs was a pile of receipts and what looked like printed emails. I grabbed the emails first. They were love letters, digital love letters between Mark and someone named Cassandra Williams. The earliest ones were dated 8 months ago. 8 months. Mark had been cheating on me for 8 months. I read the first email aloud, my voice getting stronger with each word. Mark, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you, about us. I know this is complicated, but what we have is real. I love you. Cassie, Mark's mother gasped. My father's face went dark with anger. But I wasn't finished. I grabbed the receipts next. Hotel bills, restaurant charges, jewelry purchases. All the expenses I'd seen on that secret credit card, laid out like evidence in a trial. And at the bottom of the box, folded up like it was precious, was a letter, handwritten on expensive stationery. I unfolded it and read, "My darling Mark, I can't wait until we can stop hiding. I know you said you need more time to figure out how to leave Sarah, but I'm getting impatient. I want to be your wife. I want to have your children. I want to build a real life with you, not just stolen moments in hotel rooms. Please tell her soon. I love you with everything I have. Forever, yours, Cassandra." The date on the letter was last week. Last week, Mark was planning to leave me. Last week, while I was working double shifts at the hospital. While I was cooking dinner and doing laundry and playing the perfect wife. My husband was planning his escape. And somehow, all the evidence had ended up in a box that Mark brought to our family dinner. I looked up at him, and the expression on his face told me everything I needed to know. He hadn't meant for me to see this. He hadn't meant for anyone to see this. "Mark," I said, and my voice was deadly calm. "Why did you bring this box to dinner?" He opened his mouth, closed it again, opened it once more. Cassandra was supposed to pick it up today. She was going to come by while everyone was here, and I was going to give it to her outside. But she never showed up. She was supposed to pick up her lingerie and love letters at our house during our family dinner. Mark nodded miserably. She was going to call when she got here, and I was going to step outside for a few minutes. Nobody would have known. I stared at him. This man I'd been married to for 5 years. This man I'd trusted with my heart, my future, my entire life. "So you brought the box inside because you were worried someone might steal it from your car." Another miserable nod. "And you put it on our dinner table because I didn't want to leave it somewhere where you might find it. I thought, I thought it would be safer in plain sight. I thought everyone would just assume it was a gift or something." I started laughing. I couldn't help it. The sound came out of me like broken glass. "You brought evidence of your affair to our family dinner because you thought it would be safer than leaving it in your car." "Sarah, please, let me explain," but I was done listening to explanations. I stood up from my chair, still holding Cassandra's lingerie in one hand and her love letter in the other. "Everyone," I said, turning to face our families, "I'd like you to meet Cassandra Williams." I held up one of the Polaroid photos. She's 26 years old, she works in marketing, and she's been sleeping with my husband for 8 months. Mark shot to his feet so fast his chair toppled backward. "Sarah, stop, please. Not like this. Not like this." I turned to face him, and I could feel 5 years of trust and love and faith curdling into pure rage. "Then how, Mark? How should I find out that my husband is cheating on me? Should I have waited for you to work up the courage to ask for a divorce? Should I have pretended not to notice the credit card bills and the late nights and the fact that you smell like another woman's perfume half the time you knew?" His face went even paler. If that was possible, I suspected. But I wanted to believe in us. I wanted to believe that the man I married wouldn't lie to me for 8 months straight. My mother was crying. My father looked like he wanted to hit something. Mark's parents sat frozen in their chairs, staring at their son like he'd turned into a stranger. "Sarah," Mark said, stepping toward me with his hands raised like I was a wild animal. "I was going to tell you. I was going to explain everything. After you'd already moved in with Cassandra. After you'd already started your new life with her." I waved the letter in the air. "According to this, she's getting impatient. She wants you to leave me. She wants to marry you and have your children." Mark flinched like I'd slapped him. "Do you love her?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. "Do you love Cassandra Williams, Mark?" He looked at me, then at his parents, then back at me. His mouth opened and closed like a fish, gasping for air. "Answer me," I screamed. "Do you love her?" And then, in a voice so quiet I almost missed it, Mark said, "Yes." The word hit me like a physical blow. I actually staggered backward. "Yes," he said again, louder this time. "Yes, I love her. I love her more than I've ever loved anyone in my life." My mother sobbed. I think it was David, said, "Jesus Christ, Mark." But Mark wasn't finished. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Sarah. I met her at a business conference in Dallas. And we just, connected. She's brilliant and funny. And she makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years." Each word was like a knife, twisting deeper. And what about me? I asked. What about our marriage? What about the vows we made in front of everyone we love? Mark ran his hands through his hair, and I could see him crumbling. Our marriage has been over for a long time, Sarah. You know it, and I know it. We're like roommates who happen to share a bed. When was the last time we really talked? When was the last time we made love instead of just having sex? When was the last time you looked at me the way Cassandra looks at me? So this is my fault. My voice was rising again. I drove you into another woman's arms. Because I worked double shifts at the hospital trying to save people's lives instead of making you feel like the center of the universe. That's not what I'm saying. That's exactly what you're saying. I threw the lingerie across the table. It landed in the middle of the pasta bowl. You're saying that because I don't worship you the way your 26-year-old girlfriend does. You had the right to cheat on me for 8 months. Mark's father stood up slowly. His voice was quiet and cold. Mark, he said, I think you should leave. Dad, I think you should leave right now. Before I say something I'll regret. Mark looked around the table. At his parents, who couldn't even look at him. At David and Jessica, who were covering their children's ears. At my parents, who had welcomed him into their family 6 years ago, and were now staring at him like he was a stranger. Finally, his eyes landed on me. Sarah, he said, and his voice broke. I never meant for you to find out this way. But you did mean for me to find out. He nodded. Cassandra is pregnant. Those 3 words, Cassandra is pregnant, hit the room like a bomb. I felt my knees give out. I sank back into my chair, staring at Mark like he'd just told me the world was ending. Which, in a way, he had. Pregnant, I repeated. 10 weeks, Mark said miserably. She found out last month. 10 weeks pregnant, which meant Mark had gotten another woman pregnant. While he was still sleeping in my bed, still telling me he loved me every morning, still playing the role of devoted husband. Is that why you were going to leave me? Because she's pregnant? Mark nodded. She wants to keep the baby. She wants us to be a family. A family. The word hit me like a slap. Mark and I had been trying to have children for 2 years. 2 years of fertility doctors and ovulation calendars and carefully timed intimacy. 2 years of negative pregnancy tests and disappointment, and Mark telling me that it would happen when it was meant to happen. Meanwhile, he was getting another woman pregnant on the first try. We've been trying to have a baby for 2 years, I said, my voice hollow. I know. The doctors said there was nothing wrong with either of us. They said we just needed to keep trying. I know, but apparently you can get Cassandra pregnant without any trouble at all. Mark's silence was answer enough. I looked around the table at our families. The people who had celebrated our wedding, who had toasted our future, who had believed in our love story just as much as I had. They all looked as shattered as I felt. Well, I said finally, standing up and smoothing down my dress. I guess this dinner party is over. I started collecting the evidence of Mark's betrayal. The photos, the letters, the receipts, and putting them back in the black box. Sarah, what are you doing? Mark asked. I'm keeping these, I said calmly. For my lawyer. Sarah, please, we can work this out. I looked at him then, really looked at him, and I realized something that should have been obvious months ago. I didn't know this man at all. The Mark I'd fallen in love with, the Mark I'd married, the Mark I'd built a life with. He didn't exist. He was a character Mark had played for 6 years, and now the curtain had finally fallen. There's nothing to work out, I said. You love someone else. You're having a baby with someone else. You want to build a life with someone else. I picked up the black box and held it against my chest. So go build it, but you won't be destroying what we had anymore, because as of right now, we have nothing. Mark opened his mouth to argue, but I cut him off. I want you out of my house tonight. I want you to pack whatever you need and go stay with Cassandra or your parents or a hotel. I don't care where, as long as it's not here. Sarah and Mark. I looked him directly in the eyes. The next time we speak, it will be through lawyers. With that, I walked out of the dining room, leaving behind the wreckage of what I'd thought was my perfect marriage. I didn't cry that night. I thought I would. I expected to fall apart the moment I closed the bedroom door behind me. But instead, I felt empty, hollow, like someone had scooped out everything inside me and left nothing but space. I could hear voices downstairs. Mark arguing with his father, my mother trying to comfort his mother, someone, probably David, attempting to calm everyone down. Eventually, I heard footsteps on the stairs, and then the sound of Mark packing. He knocked on the bedroom door around midnight. Sarah, his voice was muffled through the wood. Can we please talk? I didn't answer. I'm leaving now, he said after a few minutes of silence. But this isn't over. We need to figure out how to handle this like adults. I almost laughed. Adults don't bring evidence of their affairs to family dinners and then act surprised when their spouses find it. I'll call you tomorrow, Mark said. He didn't call the next day, or the day after that. I found out later that Cassandra had finally shown up at our house that Sunday morning. She'd expected to pick up her box of belongings and instead found Mark packing his clothes into suitcases, looking like his world had ended. Which, I guess, it had. They moved in together immediately. Mark rented a downtown apartment, probably using money from that secret credit card, and by all accounts, they're playing house quite nicely. I filed for divorce the following Monday. Texas is a no-fault divorce state, which means I couldn't use Mark's infidelity against him legally, but I also didn't need his permission to end our marriage. The divorce was finalized 3 months later. Mark got to keep his business and his new girlfriend and his unborn child. I got to keep the house, half of our shared assets, and most importantly, my son. 6 months have passed since that dinner, and people keep asking me if I regret opening that box. They want to know if I wish I'd stayed ignorant. If I think I would have been happier not knowing the truth about Mark's affair. The answer is no. Absolutely not. Yes, finding out about Cassandra destroyed my marriage. But my marriage was already destroyed. I just didn't know it yet. Mark had checked out months ago. He was living a double life, and I was living in denial. That black box didn't ruin my life. It saved my life. Because now I know the truth. Now I know that the man I loved never really existed. Now I know that I deserve better than someone who can lie to my face for 8 months while planning his escape. I'm not going to pretend this has been easy. I've spent plenty of nights crying into my pillow, wondering what I did wrong, wondering if I could have fought harder for my marriage. But here's what I've learned. You can't fight for something that was never really there. Mark didn't cheat because our marriage was in trouble. Our marriage was in trouble because Mark was already gone. He'd already chosen someone else. He just hadn't worked up the courage to tell me yet. And maybe that's the saddest part of all. Not that he fell out of love with me, but that he was too much of a coward to be honest about it. If Mark had come to me 8 months ago and said, "Sarah, I'm not happy. I think we should separate," it would have been devastating, but it would have been honest. It would have given us both a chance to end things with dignity. Instead, he chose to lie, to deceive, to make me complicit in my own betrayal by keeping me in the dark, while he built a new life with someone else. That's not love. That's not even basic human decency. So no, I don't regret opening that box. I regret marrying someone who was capable of putting that box on our dinner table in the first place. These days, I'm rebuilding my life piece by piece. I still live in our house. My house now. I've redecorated the bedroom, thrown out everything that reminded me of Mark, and turned his home office into a reading room. I'm still working at the hospital, still saving lives, still finding purpose in helping other people heal. The work feels more meaningful now, somehow, maybe because I know what it's like to need healing myself. I've started therapy, which has been harder than I expected, but incredibly helpful. My therapist says I'm grieving not just the end of my marriage, but the death of the person I thought Mark was. She's right. I've also started dating again. Nothing serious yet. I am not ready for serious, but I am learning how to trust my instincts again. How to recognize red flags. How to value honesty over charm. Most importantly, I've learned that I don't need someone else to complete me. I'm complete on my own. A partner should add to my life, not define it. Mark and Cassandra had their baby last month, a girl. I heard through mutual friends that they named her Emma. I hope she's healthy and happy. I hope she grows up with more integrity than her father. I also hope that someday, when she's old enough to understand, someone tells Emma the truth about how her parents got together. Not to hurt her, but so she can learn from their mistakes. Because here's the thing about truth. It always comes out eventually. Always. You can hide it in black boxes and secret credit cards and mysterious phone calls, but eventually, someone opens the box. Someone always opens the box. I want to end this story with a message for anyone who might be living their own version of what I went through. If you remarried to someone who takes mysterious phone calls and hides their computer screen, when you walk in the room and comes home smelling like perfume that is unto yours, trust your instincts. If you find credit card statements for accounts you didn't know existed, or if your partner suddenly starts working late every night, or if they seem like a stranger wearing your spouse's face, ignore those red flags. And if someone you love places a mysterious box in front of you and tells you not to touch it anyway. Because you deserve the truth, even when the truth is ugly. You deserve honesty, even when honesty hurts. You deserve a partner who chooses you every single day. Not someone who's already chosen someone else but hasn't bothered to tell you yet. Don't waste years of your life loving someone who isn't really there. Don't be complicit in your own betrayal by choosing ignorance over truth. Open the box, face the truth, and then build a life worthy of who you really are. Trust me, the truth will set you free, even when it breaks your heart first. And sometimes, a broken heart is exactly what you need to make room for something better. Closing shot. Sarah closes the black box, now empty except for the legal papers from her divorce, and places it in a donation bag. She's moving forward, one day at a time, building a life based on truth instead of beautiful lies, and she walks out the front door into the Texas sun, ready to face whatever comes next with her eyes wide open. For more heartwarming videos, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share. If you're craving powerful storytelling, raw emotion, and the sweet pain of karma, this is the place for you.